is when the child, the living of it, the joy of it, the floating on the water like a little kid happens. Then it's like, oh, I'm okay. No matter where I go and what I do, it's all God, and what a joy. This is fun. Okay. And wouldn't we love to be able to say to all these struggling, fighting, different, oh gosh, all these wars of people, even in families, just these wars of people against people. Wouldn't it be wonderful to just say, come on, let's all just go float on the ocean? That's the message, but we'll do our best. Come on, let's just float here. This is wonderful. Anyway, that's what it's like. It's more like that.
Well, you triggered a ton here. I'm going to try to keep it to a minimum. I'll use a Hederman expression. He says at some point his mind came out of the self-enfolded yogic position and released, opened up and flowered almost. And you can say what you're talking about there. And again, you're describing it in verse form, but the mind lets go of its habitual contraction. And as a little example, you've probably heard this. I'll see if I can do it off my memory. But this sort of, your mind when it's not moving is spirit and awareness. When it's moving, it's perceived as mind. But the little poem that came to me 30 years ago is, it's called A Silent Mind. An empty mind is also clear. Without thought there is no fear. A quiet mind lives in peace, makes the most of even least. A silent mind has no bound. Open and still itself is found.
Yes, that's beautiful. Where did you write that? Where did that come from?
Well, the child wrote it 30 years ago.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
That is beautiful. That's exactly it. And what you made me think of when you were saying about Hederman and this opening and the tight within itself, the yoga tight, I thought, oh, you know what else is interesting about that metaphor of floating on the ocean is that it's funny because when other, the other kids, let's say the other kids are, out there or something, it's like some of them couldn't float. It's like there was such a fear of letting go or that struggle. The minute you start kicking and struggling, that fear or the grasping of I can't lay on the ocean is like just that struggle. It's interesting. The struggle causes you to sink. The letting go, you can float. That's a really good metaphor because the struggling with your mind, with all that you're thinking and trying to get rid of and trying to become enlightened or trying to float. I mean, it's like that's a really good metaphor because you can't try to float. You have to just let go and float. It's a shift. It's a letting go of that. It's a letting go of fear, completely letting go of fear. And as I said, it's even beyond trust. It's more than trust. You have to. Oh, that's the other one. It has to be. Part of this is that you have to actually prove it. You have to kind of be gutsy enough to prove it, like to say, "Oh, God is all." Oh, okay. What does that mean? It's kind of like you have to float on it and prove it. You have to say, is it really? Okay, let me see if it really is. And in doing that, it's like that's kind of taking the action or putting it to practice. That's probably where that word practice got distorted, you got to do a practice. You got to stand on your head. You got to, bow in prayer every day. But that's not practice. The practice is meaning practice. Put it to the test. Prove it. Live it. Practicing. Like a doctor is practicing. He's doing it. Doesn't mean he's still learning it and school when he's saying, I practice medicine. It doesn't mean he's learning it. It means he's actually living it. He's doing it as a practice. So that's what the word practice really means, is you live it, you do it, it's a living thing that you are. That's practicing.
Yeah, what comes to mind is it's sort of practicing letting go, which is it's sort of you'll hear the term effortless doing, and really that's when I'm not there thinking about what I'm doing. The doing is happening, and I'm sort of along for the ride, where it's become a holistic thing. And the practice we're talking about, in terms of the release, the other imagery is the floating, where I'm trying to float. Well, trying to float doesn't create the release and relaxation necessary to actually float. So any effort is going to cause me to sink. And it's really a vulnerability and a surrendering of the mind, and the mind is fearful. So when it's fearful, it tries. When it tries, it sinks. The metaphor I used to get was flying, basically. There are levels of learning. The first is I don't know anything about it. Second is I know about it. Third, I'm learning about it. And generally, you have to program the mind, and you do steps. You do, to fly, to make a turn, you got to pull back, put the throttle forward, and put some trim in. Those are things that happen simultaneously, but in the learning process, you got to program 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and there's an interim period where I'm trying to think 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 and do something that should be happening simultaneously, and it doesn't come out too well. But once it's internalized and I don't have to think about it, and I trust it and let it just flow out of me, it happens of itself, and you can do what could be defined as 10 things at once, but they're happening simultaneously, sort of like I'm beating my heart, I'm growing my bones, my system is circling. There are billions of things that are going in my body that I claim to be mine simultaneously, and yet my mind claims to be in charge of that when it can think of 5 things before it gets very nervous.
That's a really good way to describe it. It's exactly like that. It's like, because we all know that too. We all know how that is, where you learn something step by step, and then eventually it all comes together. It becomes a whole, and you don't even think about what button you got to press and what thing you got to. It all works, and there's no more thinking involved, and it's like they would say, it's an automatic. You just do what you do now because you got it, and it just all comes together, and there's no thinking about. You're right. We don't think about, I'm going to lift my arm and to pick up the telephone. It's like you don't go, everything flows, and you just do. It's all so smooth and graceful and coordinated and perfect. And the more we trust, the more this allness, this total divine intelligence just gracefully dances, and our life becomes so much, it just becomes so easy and so beautiful and so tender and so sweet, and all of it works. It's like everything works, and it's doing it just because God is divine intelligence. It knows how to pull all the levers and do all the switches, and whatever it's doing it just perfectly. And without trying to make it do it ourselves, and pushing against it.
It's like the metaphor I always use for this is if you turn a bicycle upside down and you start spinning the wheel like a kid would, it goes faster and faster and faster. At a certain point, it's going too fast for your physical responses and actions to time it. And as a result, any effort on your part actually stops the wheel. And that's sort of what happens when baseball players are classic examples. I mean, these people are very skilled at what they do, and when they're quote-unquote in the flow, which really means not thinking about what they're doing, they're great. But the moment they get into a slump and then they start thinking about what am I doing wrong, they're essentially doing that thing with a bicycle where my mind is trying to do something it's incapable of doing. Then it gets frustrated and tries to do it more. And the paradox is we as human beings identify with our minds, think that, well, if a little thinking isn't working, more thinking will help when it's thinking that's causing the problem in the first place.
Right, yes. And sports are a great metaphor for this, exactly. When you're in the flow, boy, I mean, any sport in the flow, it's a winner. It's beautiful. It does it. The power and the strength and the ability, and it's all right there. And boy, people who do a sport kind of thing, they've felt that. They know it. And that's a really good description of it, because that's what it is. And they don't know, they practiced for many years, but eventually it just came to be this perfect, right there with it, and they just do it. You're right. But, I wonder if, I think maybe we don't even have to, I guess that's the practice. I don't know. It's sort of like, to do any sport really well, I think they've got to kind of really keep at it. But I don't like to think in terms of that one has to keep at it or keep going. I'm sort of like thinking, can you just start from what is and...
Well,
but you can,
We're sort of talking a top-down and bottom-up. The body-mind organism is like a mechanism that has to have... we all have potential skill sets, and the skill set generally has to be programmed. Now, from a top-down standpoint, if you had access, we'll say, to the divine mind where all those skill sets are there, it would possibly be, it could be possible that you could access skills that this body mind didn't particularly learn, but you have access to it. But by the same token, if this body mind has has underdeveloped legs, that skill set of being able to do a 15 or 16 foot pole vault just isn't going to be that potential isn't going to be able to manifest through that body. So there's probably a certain amount of, you have to, at least at the bottom up standpoint, have to program the mechanism so the skill set is there so the spirit can actually flow through it.
Yeah, you're right. There's two different views there. That's true. And I also think it almost feels like from the top down view, then I think you'd just play baseball because you love it.
Yeah, you wouldn't be trying to prove anything.
It wouldn't be all that crazy insanity of people, trying to get to the top. That's a little, so, yes, in a way the sports metaphor doesn't quite work because, boy, the competition and the belligerence and the pushing and shoving in that stuff is just as crazy as the pushing and shoving in, the religious wars or the government wars or the political wars, kind of thing, all of it that's crazy. So, yeah, you're right. It's an interesting metaphor, though, because everybody, I think, has experienced that sense of flow. But you're right. From bottom up, it doesn't really work in what we're trying to
it sort of points to the idea of, for me anyway, it points to the idea of trust. That the world will say confidence. Well, if I have confidence, I know I can do it. I don't doubt myself, so my mind doesn't get its foot into the door and stop the wheel from spinning, basically, or put me out of phase with reality. Because when I think, I used to use the term, when I'm thinking, I'm in my head, and thinking burns moth-holes in the moment. You create imperfect information information outside. And if I'm thinking about batting while I'm trying to bat, which is real time, I'm out of phase with what's going on, and the result is going to be inappropriate. It's not. It's the